Stop. Raise your hand if you read the patch notes and TWABs every week. Yeah, that's understandable. It's pretty boring usually. However, something seemed to pass through the cracks last week that very few people seemed to even notice. On the April 9th patch notes, the same day as Into the Light dropped, as well as a large sweeping change occurring in the PvP sandbox, there was a small note at the top of the perks section, reintroducing Dares of Eternity weapon perks that were previously removed. Now, while there aren't many weapons from that pool, a few of them were buffed, some by a little, some by a lot, just by this change. This video wouldn't be long enough just talking about those 5 or so weapons, so afterwards I'll rapidly fire through some of the new Into the Light weapons with roles I'd recommend, and I'm going to try to focus on things people know less about rather than the obvious ones. And yes, these are already in the game. I checked. Yeah, the sword that everyone has used to go everywhere for the last few years. It got buffed. And not just because someone takes totally real pictures of cats wielding them. Reintroduced into the perk pool is Surrounded, one of the single largest damage boosting perks in the game at the moment, and one that is very synergistic with a sword that needs to be next to the opponent anyways. While speedrunners may still opt for Frenzy with its handling bonus, most people will almost always find more use when they swap to Surrounded, and making your sword hit that much harder when you need to swing it at an enemy. You know, on purpose. This one is an interesting case, as the one perk I know for a fact was removed was Snapshot, making the crafted version arguably worse than the base ones for PvP. However, another perk I'm fairly sure was recently re-added to the perk pool is its signature perk, Hunt Executioner Rounds, letting your pulse hit for massively increased damage after landing a melee hit on an enemy. Though, thankfully, this doesn't work with ranged melees that go too far. You know, at least since the last time I recall using it. With both perks re-added into the pool, it'll at least save me some vault space from keeping rolls with said old perks, and if you're a fan favorite of it in PvP, might be worth trying out again. I was gonna skip this one, but I think I can keep this short. The only perk it seemingly regained from what I could find was Dual Loader. The only reason I mention it at all is that now, with access to the enhanced version of the perk with the crafted weapon, you can reload 3 shots at once, having a pretty cool synergy with Trench Barrel, who wants to fire 3 shots each time anyways. If you like the gun, or Trench Barrel gets massively buffed in the future, it's good to think about. Okay, best for last. Of the 4 weapons listed from Dares, this is very likely the least known of them, and least used across the game. However, that's simply because people didn't understand its utility in the past, and by the time it was known, the best perk it had access to was gone. Shoot to Loot. I was lucky enough to hold on to a roll with this perk from back in the day after watching a clip of someone proccing Golden Tricorn ×2 in PvP and keeping their ammo count up by shooting the falling ammo from the eliminated player previously out of the sky. I wanted the roll. I procured it and put it in the vault to never use it again. Whoops. However, now with it back, I can now fill the niche role of a special ammo primary that can efficiently collect ammo from across the room. Shoot to Loot traces are also part of the single most broken PvE composition of spamming Solar Warlocks with Cenotaph's Helm, letting you mark enemies with your trace, giving you a chance at spawning green ammo for yourself and power ammo for your teammates. The mark can stack, running as many Cenotaphs as possible to spam these ammo drops on any champion or even boss type that you couldn't finish with Aeons. With Shoot to Loot, your team marks the champion with the trace, you fire an artillery strike of rockets at the champion, you Shoot to Loot pick up the power ammo it dropped right away, and you do it again. Again. Giving you a monstrously powerful loop that can trivialize most content in the game. Before this, the only trace rifle that could run Shoot to Loot was Path of Least Resistance, and while overall it might be better, this season, not so much. Being a solar trace, you now have the ability to also proc Flint Striker from the seasonal artifact, turning your ammo collecting laser beam into its own anti-barrier weapon, when it grants you Radiant. Without this function, Path of Least Resistance will probably go back to being the only trace that also intrinsically stuns champions without a dedicated artifact mod through Jolt Shot, stunning overloads. Though again, this season, with rockets being overloads, and with Jolt Shot requiring a kill to activate, Retrace Path has become my go-to this season. This very, very long season. Okay, that's it for refreshed weapons from Dares, and I'd 100% recommend looking into upgrading your sword with Surrounded and that Trace Rifle. If you're a fan of the other weapons, their new perks are a cool addition, but aren't that crazy. Now, a bit faster pace, let me run through some of the newly reintroduced, into the light weapons and what they have to offer. This might be one of the most interesting PvP weapons they added this update, which is a funny thing to say about one of the most well-known PvE primaries from the old days. Midnight Coup gets the interesting role of Explosive Payload and Zen Moment, a perk combo that's not available on any weapon other than sunset weapons or some scout rifles. Zen Moment as a perk procs and increases its effect based on the shots landed, meaning Explosive Payload should stack this perk twice as fast. With options like Opening Shot, Enlightened Action, and Moving Target for controller players, this weapon feels tailor-made for a consistent firing experience. For PvE, you'll find Shoot to Loot and Kinetic Tremors to likely be the best option, though if you like the feeling of the old weapon, Rampage or Firefly are also good options. It's a primary in PvE, you really aren't being optimal anyways, so you might as well have some fun. Sticking to hand cannons for convenience sake, let's talk about this monster of a weapon. First and foremost, Magnificent Howl is likely the best perk, both in PvP and PvE. In the latter, I see three options. Slide Shot for consistent perk uptime and 2-tapping as much as possible. Eye of the Storm to give you the best single target dueling experience, granting you free headshots from thin air. And if you're a god among us, or you just like having fun, Encore for crazy feeds, as it's a perk that'll make your gun feel unbelievably strong with even just a single stack, making kill chains that much easier. For PvE, I'd still recommend Magnificent Howl for chunky ad clearing and major hitting damage, though Incandescent or the new Desperate Measures perk are also fine substitutes. Run this alongside Subsistence for a lot of shots. Bouncing to the other PvP originating weapon, and history's single most dominant weapon for PvE. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, this thing's kinda cheeks. Now, that's a statement likely coming from the fact that in the past, it was basically a power weapon machine gun in the primary slot. But with general power creep of the game, and other SMGs that felt similar to it, current Recluse doesn't really bring that much compared to other weapons. Still, there are some fun rolls. For PvE, do not look at Master of Arms. Frenzy will almost always be a better option for you, as it gives the same damage boost, but it also comes with a large handling bonus. Pair that with either Subsistence or Feeding Frenzy, and you've got a solid weapon. More nichely, Repulsor Brace and Destabilizing Rounds are also really interesting. Though it's not a unique role to this weapon, or even SMG, the fact that you can get these additionally as multi-perks on a shiny drop means it's pretty good to have. For PvP, Enlightened Action and Threat Detector are the best first row perks, with Repulsor Brace only being viable on a Void debuff specific build like Gerfalcon's Hunter, and Dynamic Sway being generally a controller only option. For second column, Target Lock is still a good option, letting you keep pace with the insane amount of healing currently in the game right now. With Tap the Trigger, Master of Arms, and Frenzy being my side picks if you don't really like Target Lock all that much anymore. Alright, picking up the pace. For PvP, Zen Moment in the first column is crazy. It lets you pair it with either Rapid Hit for almost a literal laser beam, or Snapshot, Keep Away, or even Head Seeker if you prefer the playstyle. For PvE, while Kinetic Tremors and Firefly sounds cool, I don't think it's as good as adding Shoot to Loot. A cooler unknown interaction between perks is that the aftermath effect of Firefly is also under the effects of Shoot to Loot. So with this perk, ammo drop from an enemy may be caught in the blast and auto picked up for you, making it pretty convenient. Yep, it's the Scout that keeps coming back. As the last primary, I certainly wouldn't call it the best, While it keeps the same shoot to loot Firefly combo as the last gun, it doesn't really have much options aside from that, making the only role I'd really consider going for. In PvP, this thing isn't usable. It's terrible, there's no roles to use. Okay, fine, it's no distractions and box breathing. Okay, it's broken, I get it. Alright, here we have the first weapon that hasn't actually changed all that much. Even with a refresh of perks, its main job as an AdClear weapon in PvE will mean Envious Assassin and Chain Reaction will likely still be its best role. With the scheduled nerf to Chain Reaction though, Rampage or Desperate Measures could be a solid alternative if you happen to get the multi-perk drop. It's good to note, however, that if you already have the old god role, it's likely this is a strict downgrade, as you'll lose the very potent origin trait to regain your health from the Vow role. But if you don't have that weapon, since it's from a raid, which, that's understandable, this will give you an almost same experience. From one special GL to another. But Mountaintop is much different from before. To clear this up, almost all the perks on this weapon have some viability somewhere in the game. So there is no one right answer. Personally, I'm looking for two roles. For PvP, high velocity rounds, impulse amplifier to make my shots effectively teleport to the enemy, then adrenaline junkie or recombination to try for some fun one-shot clips. It's not really competitively viable, but it sounds like a lot of fun. For PvE, the multi-perk drop with sticky grenades, spike grenades, autoloading, overflow, recombination, and frenzy are what I'm looking for. Now, why so specific? Why no Ambitious Assassin, or even Lead from Gold? Let me break it down. Sticky grenades are selected for Mountaintop for super launching, which I'm sure you've seen clips of floating around. I'm not even that good at it, and I went pretty high. Overflow is better to facilitate that, letting me ammo prep a spot for way more sticky grenades than could ever be possible otherwise. Auto-loading for convenience, and to not have to address GL's single largest weakness, their reload stat. Rather than forcing it, I find the ability to always have the shot ready more valuable. Frenzy is there for boss DPS, giving the same 15% as Vorpal on special weapons, but also coming with a handling buff, making Mountaintop the single best grenade launcher in the game for the kinetic slot. Finally, recombination for general use, giving me power spikes in a single larger shot, mainly for champions and other high health mages. I opt not to run Lead from Gold for a simple reason. Builds are too potent, and special ammo finishers are way too easy to spam for special ammo to almost ever be a notable issue. And it's one I'd almost always rather solve in my build, while also doing so for my team, who need to generate green ammo elsewhere, rather than solving it with a perk that could be better used somewhere else. There's a lot more I could say about Mountaintop. There's videos going about it for a lot longer, but I think I can stop there. Alright, since that last one was super long, I'll try to cut this one down a little bit. Our last special weapon is Succession, and it's similar to Forbearance. Its PvE role is identical to its old best role, Reconstruction and Recombination. Adding Tactical Mag, you get up to an 8 shot in the mag with a super damage first shot. It'll do everything you need it to. If you have the old role, this doesn't meaningfully upgrade the weapon and isn't needed, but the sniper has a funny role for PvP, Discord and Snapshot. The only other sniper that could get this role is the Halloween event sniper Macabre, but since the event weapon is already gone and you can't farm for it anymore, and it left before we knew the new sandbox, where Discord was much more valuable, very few people really have it. With this, you'll have a fast handling sniper that can bypass normal ammo mounts by simply getting an energy or heavy weapon kill, giving you almost 10 seconds of infinite ammo as long as you get a headshot, which sounds pretty dang strong to me. Finally, moving on to the power weapons. We start with our Vortex Frame sword, and a weapon that, in the past, would hold sustained damage better than almost everything else in the game. Currently, for damage, Vortex Frames aren't the strongest, but this can still do the job in similar pace to the other options. Relentless and Surrounded for your damage roll, repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds for your AdClear option. Bait and switch could be nice as well, as it's easier to use than surrounded, but with it only lasting 10 or so seconds and the need to re-proc it mid-damage when you're swinging your sword makes it less optimal in my eyes. Finally, if you get a good roll that's shiny and happens to have Eager Edge, that's a win to me. An AdClear Monster from the past, now with a glow up to make it look like Delirium's dad. This weapon has a lot of funny rolls, and what you pick is generally preference. If I had to boil it down to a single roll with the best multi-perks, I would say Envious Assassin and 4th times the Charm in the first column, then Onslaught and Killing Tally for the second. Rewind rounds are also a good substitute for 4th times, but makes you more dedicated to just using your power weapon, making it a bit less flexible. Selecting between Fire Rate, which will pump out a ton more DPS, or Damage and Killing Tally for better single target mowing is mostly personal preference, but I want to be able to pick that whenever I want. Finally, the last and by far most upgraded weapon from its past is the funny gun that used to get dropped too much. Here, there is a single super god roll to live above the rest of the rolls. Well, any combination of those main perks are all pretty good options. The roll I'm talking about is Sticky Grenades, Spike Grenades, Cascade Point, Envious Assassin, Bait and Switch, and Deconstruct. Let me clear up the obvious ones before I explain the weirder parts. Editor's note, the script was made a few days ago when everyone didn't know this interaction, so with Envious and Cascade Point in the same column, what you can do is start any activity on Envious Assassin and stack it up to the max. With backup mag and or a mag increasing magazine like Augmented Drum, letting you stack up that many more shots in your jail before damage, then swapping back to Spike Grenades, Boss Spec, and Cascade Point, you can hit the highest possible DPS currently in the game. You can unload massive damage after proccing Bait and Switch too. Now then, moving on to the Sticky Grenades and Deconstruct. These two perks have a specifically cool interaction due to the Sticky Grenades themselves counting as entities in the game, meaning when they detonate, they count to the Deconstruct's perk to refund ammo, effectively becoming a kind of triple tap for your grenade launcher. As a side effect of this as well, any boss that may be considered a vehicle, you'll gain a permanent 40% damage boost, which is a lot. That is larger than the current Bait and Switch 30%. I'd also say this is likely for general use if you're not trying to nuke a boss. I will also mention, with how strong this is, there is a chance it could get nerfed in the future, but for now I'm going to plan as if it won't. Alright, that's it. While some of these weapons may have been fairly one-dimensional, there was enough things to say about some of them that I haven't heard many people talk about that I wanted to bring it up. Not to mention the refresh dares perk pools being almost unnoticed by a lot of players means that I think this is worth it. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. I hope this slower pace, informative video was helpful and didn't waste too much of your time. If I missed a cool roll that you've been trying out, let me know in the comments below. Though this video is more about optimal rolls for weapons, but at the end of the day, having fun when you play games should be the end goal. So throw those weapon rolls down below and let's share them.